Hello, how are you? My name is Yuchen. Welcome to the 7th bookmaking tutorial. There are some heartbreaking news in the past week, near and far. And I think it would be so insensitive, if not irrational, to continue our business as usual without mentioning what's happening around us, the condition that we work within. I've been thinking of this encounter I had in February. I was traveling in Hong Kong for work and in Beijing for Chinese New Year in January. And of course, later in my trip, everyone had their mask on and was immersed in this fear and anger. By accident, I came back to the States the day before it closed its border to all Chinese airplanes, and I quarantined myself in Brooklyn for 14 days, while my community here, most of my friends didn't find that necessary. And I had such difficulty translating what I experienced there, because in order to talk about the unfolding of the pandemic in China, I had to first introduce the political landscape, the media censorship, the legal system, or the absence of it, and social norms, economic injustice. And I had such an anxiety for knowledge and articulation. And I remember texting my friend in Hong Kong and told her that now I understand the news addiction she'd been suffering for months during the protest in Hong Kong. After my quarantine, I went to this coffee shop in my neighborhood, and there's a barista, a black young man who's always very kind to me, asked how was my day. And I told him that I'd been consuming news for hours. And he said, "What did you learn?" And I told him that I learned a lot of people are suffering. And he said, "That is true." I knew he wasn't talking about what happened in Wuhan, not what happened in Hong Kong either, but that is true. A lot of people are suffering here and there for this and that reason. Some of them I'm at a position to know more, some of them I know so little. And it seems to me that these struggles are not translated or communicated, even though there's such potential, because essentially they are all voices for those who are bullied, for the life that's treated as less. And I want to make attempt for that translation, for that communication. And now I think it's time for me to learn what I ought to be learning long time ago: blackness. I think making art in difficult time is not to escape from reality and not to decorate it either, but to find means and possibilities for the manifold and specific narratives. And here I want to provide just one more option for your narration, for your expression. Today we're gonna do a simple stamp binding book, 4-hole stamp binding. So I've trimmed my paper into the same sizes. I have these two as covers and these as text block. As we're only learning, I would suggest to use thinner text block, maybe 5 to 8 sheets for now. And test their grain direction. Mine goes this way, so this will be my spine. Okay. And I will need another sheet of paper that's in the same height with my book, and this will function as a stitching guide. So first I'm gonna draw a line. About an inch away from this edge, like this. And then I'm going to fold this guide in half, and in half again, and in half again. So 3 times in total. And you open it up, you will see multiple marks. And with a pencil, I'm going to mark the first fold where it crosses with the line that we just drew. So I will make this mark, and I'll skip one and mark the next cross, and skip one, and mark the next cross, and skip one, and mark the last cross. So first one and skip, another one and skip, and another one and skip, and the last one. 4 holes in total. And I'm going to place this guide on top of my stack of covers, text block, and back cover. And I'll make sure they all lined up nicely on the spine. Okay. And I'll use 2 clips to keep them together. Okay. Next, you will need an awl or a needle if you don't have an awl. And if you have a hammer, you can use it, but I have a rock here that I find handy actually. And make sure you are doing it on a surface that's more enduring. So I'm gonna place my awl on this mark, and I will use my rock to apply some pressure here. Okay. Once you feel the surface, once your awl is through, you can pick it up and do the rest in the air. Pierce all the way through with your awl, like this. And do it 4 times. Now I've pierced all 4 holes, and I'm going to very gently open my clip one at a time to remove this guide paper. Okay. Now I'm ready to stitch. So the length of the thread you will need is the height of your book times 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And remember last time I used this thread from a sewing kit, and I doubled it because it's rather fragile. If you are using regular sewing thread, I still suggest you to double the thread. So you will measure the length as the height of your book times 8 and then double it. Okay, but I'm using actual book binding thread now, so I'm not going to double it. Okay, and we're going to start stitching. We start from the inside of the book. So I'm gonna lift a couple pages like this and insert my thread here and come out to the second hole of the front cover. Come out like this. And inside of the book, we leave about this much to finish with. Okay. So I'm kind of holding with my finger where that thread is. I can feel it. Sorry, this way. And we're going to wrap around the spine and come back to the same hole, to the second hole here. Okay. Okay. And we move to the next one. And we wrap around the spine, come back to the same hole. You're kind of pulling the tension constantly while stitching, and we move to the next one. So whenever we arrive at a new hole, we first wrap around the spine and come back to the same hole. Here at the end, I'm going to remove the clip here and wrap around the tail of my book and come back to the same hole. Okay, I'm done with this side of my book, so I'm gonna move this way. So on your way back, you are just filling gaps. So fill this gap first. And fill this gap. It will make much more sense if you're doing it by hand. I know when watching it can be quite confusing. I remember how I felt when watched the demo on the class when I was studying with Myanga. But once you're doing it with your hand, it's actually, your hand will find a way. Here, we're moving to the last hole. And whenever we arrive at a new hole, we wrap around the spine and come back to the same hole. And here, it's the same thing with this end. We're gonna remove the clip and wrap around the head of my book and come back to the same hole. Okay. So this side is finished. This side we only have one gap left. And now to finish, we're gonna fill this gap, but we're going to meet the beginning of the thread. So I'll open my book, find the beginning of my thread, and I will insert my needle from this second hole where we started to meet the beginning here. Okay, and you can remove your needle, tie a knot or 2 knots to be sure. And you can trim the actual thread here. Okay. My knot was a bit too tight. But yes, that's a simple 4-hole stab binding. I have an example here. It's a book that's pretty beat up. I think for the next video, we're going to fix it together. It was bound with step binding, but it only has 3 holes. So it can be seen as a slight variation to what we learned today. Also, the design is very unique and very organically combined with this kind of binding style. So I think in fixing it, for the next video, we can have a better understanding of its structure and its concept from within. I think it's a really brilliant example. So that's what I want to show you today, a 4-hole step binding. I've received some pictures of books that people made inspired by the past tutorials, but really utilizing this format to express their own content. It's really amazing, and thank you for sharing those with me. There's a donation link in the description part. If that's something you can afford to, please consider making a donation to Printed Matter. You will be greatly appreciated. That's all for today. Take care. Bye-bye.